Hello and welcome to Mehta-Ethics. Recently I put out a video critiquing Leslie Cross's definition of veganism as well as some of its supporters. David C. Arenas was one of these supporters. He's since responded to my video, so I'm going to watch that response now and give my thoughts as I go along. But first I want to say that I have offered to debate David, but he's consistently rejected these offers. So David, if you really think you have a critique of anything I've said, then let's have a call and hash it out.
This guy released already 2 videos about the definition of veganism, improvising them. It's clear that he just read just a little bit, just enough for him to distort the real stance of Leslie Cross and pretend that he knows a lot about it.
So he claims that I've distorted the stance of Leslie Cross. I take it to mean that he's saying I've made it as though Leslie Cross said something he didn't, which I don't know why you would think that. I used quotes from Leslie Cross, but maybe he'll substantiate that claim. Probably not. Let's go on.
Distorted the words of Leslie Cross, and he said that it was a doctrine, not a principle. How ignorant is this guy? There are lots of different places in Cross's writings where he talks about veganism being a principle. What this guy says here is...
I never said that he didn't say veganism was a principle. I think he's referring to when I pointed out that Little Vegan Artist misquoted Cross. But he did say veganism was a principle many times. It was just that in the quote that Little Vegan Artist showed, it used the word principle, and I pointed out that in the real quote he says doctrine, not principle.
What the NutriBro pulled out of his ass. Maybe veganism should be this. According to my painist point of view, veganism should be this. So a lot of people who believe that they are vegans just because they start a simple diet, and then they start thinking, well, maybe this diet has some sort of ideology behind. But maybe the ideology is about suffering. Yeah, I think it's about suffering. And then they spend years of their lives advocating for reduction of suffering, which is not veganism.
So I don't believe veganism is about a reduction of suffering. I don't know why he thinks that.
It's utilitarianism. It's Singarians like him and the Nutri.
Okay, this is so funny. He says I'm a utilitarian and I'm a Singarian. In the video he's got on behind him, I critique Peter Singer specifically, and I say, quote, I'm not a utilitarian. So maybe he hasn't watched the video, I don't know.
To come up with a made-up definition by some people who want to co-opt.
Okay, a made-up definition. Can you give me one example of a definition that is not made up? I think all language is made up. What are you even saying?
Also, this first part is very ridiculous. It's like, but how come they don't include aliens? They should include aliens in the definition of veganism. And it's like, how ridiculous are these people? They don't talk about sentient beings. What? Donald Watson in 1945 was talking about the purpose of the vegan society being the end of the exploitation of sentient life. And in 1949, Leslie Cross said in the footnotes of the paper called In Search of Veganism, he says that animals are sentient creatures, animate sentient creatures other than man. Now, in the second video...
Yes, so I know this. At the time of making this video that he's got on behind him now, I'd never even heard Leslie Cross's definition, and I didn't know that Leslie Cross by animals meant non-human sentient beings. But regardless, it's still unclear whether the Vegan Society's definition today refers to sentient animate creatures other than man, or whether it just refers to animals as defined like beings under Kingdom Animalia. They obviously don't agree with Cross's definition of veganism, so I don't think it's obvious that they would agree with his definition of animals either.
And here he talks about, and this is the second video, here he talks about us, and he calls us cross-eyes. And so, and he says, well, there's a substock of people, and
certain subset of vegans on the internet who really like this guy.
A substack. It's the people who know about veganism. the people who accept the definition of veganism. But
Is he really saying that he's not a subset? Subset isn't pejorative. That just means like a group within a group. I suppose that he would say he's not a subset though, because everyone who disagrees with him is not a vegan according to him.
people who don't accept the definition of veganism should be intellectually honest enough to say, well, I'm not a vegan because I don't accept or I don't agree with the definition that the forefathers of veganism came up with. Maybe because Jamie Logan said, or because Earth and Ed said, or Cosmic Skeptic said that. And
I don't even know who Jamie Logan is.
now they want a movement of extinctionists, or a movement of people who want to get rid of all these bad, evil animals who cause suffering.
So I don't know why he's talking about culling predators. I didn't mention that at all in my video.
You know, this genius, humane, Hancock, humane, fuck. Even the fucking name is like, humane. Maybe veganism has to include the suffering of animals in the jungle. What for? Justice movements are about changing the minds of moral agents.
So a justice movement is about changing the mind of moral agents. So if there was a crazy mass shooter and you wanted justice against school shootings, you wouldn't be able to stop him because it's a justice movement is about changing the mind of moral agents. I don't know, that just seems bizarre.
Reducing the suffering in the universe.
But what makes this definition so great? Is it even great?
If you don't think it's great, then don't say that you're a vegan. Say that you're a Singerian. Because I believe the Singer's idea of reducing suffering is better for the animals. If you think that, then say, well, I'm a Singerian. Reduce suffering, effective altruism. If that's your idea, humane, he should be honest enough to say, well, I'm a Singerian. Singer is not a vegan. Singer is not a vegan because he doesn't believe in principles. The only principle.
I think he has to have not watched my previous video. Maybe the beginning, but I talk about how I disagree with Peter Singer in that video. And I say I'm not a utilitarian.
I'm not a utilitarian because I disagree with some examples of utilitarianism. Maybe this is better for animals because the number of victims will... Yeah, so...
And thoroughly dismantle the idea that the doctrine that man should live without exploiting animals is the indisputable definition of veganism. I'll first start...
It is the indisputable definition.
Many of its defenders actually misunderstand Leslie Cross's definition. Second,
You are the one misunderstanding.
I'll show that even when properly understood, Cross's definition suffers from fatal flaws that are committed to absurd conclusions. Before we get into the faux meat of the issue, I'd like to respectfully ask any supporters of Cross's definition to come into this video with an open mind. While yes, I may fire some shots occasionally, we all basically have the same goal of making the world a better place for animals.
No, that's a very abstract goal. Oh, a better place. Yeah. Some guy with a funny mustache wanted to make the world a better place, and there are some armed conflicts going on in the world with people behind that want to make the world a better place, and anything can be justified under that. Well, it's for the greater good. The greater good is the utilitarian excuse for a lot of.
So I don't know why he's bringing up the greater good or utilitarianism. But yeah, I do think that Crossites and I have a similar goal, right? Even if it's not exactly the same. There's two theses in my video. One is that Crossites misunderstand the definition of veganism that Cross put forward. The other is that even when properly understood, Cross's definition isn't that great. But really there's an overarching third thesis, which is the most important, which is just let's stop being really horrible to one another. This is insane, the level of infighting. And all these guys do is go on other vegans' pages and tell them they're not real vegans. How is that helpful to anything?
You just want to make the world a better place. It may be true that you want to make the world a better place for animals. Vegans believe that the best we can do for animals is to promote veganism. The Singerians think otherwise. Even worse is that this guy just read a little bit of the writings and took a little, just some excerpts from the ideas and thought, well, that's it. And he misunderstood everything he read.
I mean, this is just a baseless claim. Like, give me one example of something that I misunderstood.
Yeah,
So definitely,
sure.
then it's in your interest and the interest of the animals to address them so that you can strengthen your advocacy. Now,
If that was true, we wouldn't be blocked and censored everywhere we comment, because all these Singarians are so dishonest.
So I've said to him before, maybe the reason people block you is because you constantly attack others, yet refuse to have a productive discussion or defend your own position via a voice call. Any conversation via text just leads to you bringing up irrelevant topics and not answering simple questions. Just a speculation. My offer for a call still stands, by the way. Until you accept it, maybe keep your half-baked critiques to yourself.
I don't understand how people can watch like 3 hours of a Debate Me Bro stupid video on YouTube like every week.
I listen to them at the gym. That's how I find time. Imagine David C. Arenas is just listening to the writings of Cross over and over again every time he's outside or at the gym or whatever. You know how when you hear a word long enough, it kind of loses its meaning? Maybe he's just heard the writings of Cross so many times that they've completely lost meaning, and that's why his interpretation is so off.
What if lab-grown flesh would end the exploitation of animal life? As if necrophagy was the only problem that animals face.
I just have no idea why he's talking about lab-grown meat. This is just like entirely irrelevant to my video.
at face value, my immediate issue with this definition is that the meaning of exploitation is not clear.
Is this exploitation? And if I go to the movies and if I take a picture, but whenever animals are the victims, like, oh, I don't understand. No. The exploitation, what do you mean? What do you mean by exploitation? That's proof of the double standard.
So there's no double standard there. I would ask the same question for a human movement against human exploitation. What do you mean by exploitation? It's important to clarify that.
I've since investigated Cross's original writings and believe I have a full understanding of it now. But before getting into that, let's see what supporters of Cross's
The Dunning-Kruger effect on this guy is so strong.
He just asserts this stuff with zero evidence.
Take a look at this graphic by Little Vegan Artist. Here they say veganism equals end animal use, and they actually misquote Cross, saying veganism is the principle, instead of doctrine, that humanity should live without exploiting animals. And they say exploiting...
I'm going to look for the word principle. Well, I didn't have to look that far into Cross's writings to see that the word principle is very present and is...
I never said that Cross didn't say the word principle. The quote was longer than the word principle. So if you don't think that Little Vegan Artist misquoted Cross, show me the quote.
So it says, this is an attempt to discover the principle whose label is veganism.
That's not the quote?
There are 4 entries here. Veganism is the principle of the abolition of the exploitation of animals by man.
That's also not the quote?
This fucking guy, when you're ignorant about something, when you pretend to be an expert just because you read... I'm not even an expert at that, which George Martin says, well, they pretend to be experts.
So he was not able to show me the quote. Therefore, I still think that Little Vegan Artist misquoted Leslie Cross.
It's not a principle.
I didn't say it's not a principle. I just said that Little Vegan Artist misquoted Leslie Cross because he said the word principle instead of doctrine. Now, that is pedantic, and you could even say that principle and doctrine are equivalent, but it is the case that he misquoted Leslie Cross. And for someone so on people's case about not using Leslie Cross's definition, I think they should at least not misquote Leslie Cross.
And also the end of the use of animals. Its purpose, veganism, must be the correction of the maladjustment. The maladjustment is intimately connected with man's use of animals. For fuck's sake, these people, man. Leslie Cross didn't say that.
Connected with man's use of animals doesn't mean that any use of animals is non-vegan. I don't know why he thinks that.
And the use of animals for human purposes is a selfish act. So yeah, the act of using for selfish purposes.
So he just said for selfish purposes. He didn't say the act of using full stop.
Veganism is not about suffering or consent.
And Singer is not a vegan, and utilitarianism is not veganism.
I'm not a utilitarian. I don't follow Peter Singer. I don't know why he keeps bringing it up. Because in my video, I said that I'm not a utilitarian. And I critiqued Peter Singer.
All animal use is exploitation, and veganism is the rejection of all animal exploitation. If you believe veganism is about use without consent, stop misinforming. That's not veganism. There's no buts or ifs. All animal exploitation should be rejected.
Yeah, I stand by it.
So he says he stands by the claim that veganism is the rejection of all animal use, not use for selfish purposes.
Are of the opinion that by exploitation, Leslie Cross was referring to any and all animal use. And what?
No, the use for selfish purposes. What?
Okay, so he just contradicted himself. Previously, he said veganism is against all animal exploitation, exploitation meaning use, and now he is saying that he's not against all animal use, he's against use for selfish purposes.
Why do you have to lie? This guy has been on a lot of posts trying to, if you disagree, well then come and debate me.
Hey David, if you disagree, then come and debate me.
Rights include even extremely trivial acts like using a feather off the ground.
Yeah.
Here in this
In the same fucking paper, it's like, commodities manufactured from animals joined food from animals as being non-vegan. Yeah, if you take a fucking feather and make a commodity with a feather, just make a dream catcher, and that is not a vegan act.
Commodities manufactured from animals, I mean, that could be leather, like, the skin of an animal. A feather that's like fallen off a bird and is on the ground. It's unclear that that is a commodity manufactured from animals. And, in any case, it's not entailed that it's against veganism using Cross's definition. Like, at best, you're just showing that Cross contradicts himself.
So, yeah, it's very non-vegan to use whatever comes out of an animal. This is key to understanding why this
Well, that's not entailed by Cross's definition.
utilitarianism is opposite to veganism. Because let's say that I'm driving and I find a dead deer on the road.
I'm not a utilitarian. Bro, I literally use rights. That is incompatible with utilitarianism.
Or a dead cow on the road. And I say, well, there is no rights violations. So if there is no suffering that I caused, so...
And so he just said rights violations, which is incompatible with utilitarianism.
Maybe Leslie Cross said that... No, Leslie Cross said that commodities manufactured from animals are non-vegan.
So all he's doing here is saying that at one point in history, commodities manufactured from animals joined food from animals as being non-vegan. That's the whole quote. He's not actually prescribing anything, and he's not saying that he thinks they should be non-vegan. It's just not entailed by his definition that they are.
All right, so when Leslie Cross wrote Veganism Defined, there is this excerpt that says, the society pledges itself in pursuance of its object to seek the end the use of animals by man for food, commodities, work, hunting, vivisection, and all other uses involving exploitation of animal life by man. But what if the animal didn't suffer? And that is a Singerian idea. So Singerians say, well, maybe we can use animals.
It's like what we're talking about here is Leslie Cross's definition. It doesn't matter if elsewhere Leslie Cross said that, eating roadkill is wrong. It's just irrelevant to his definition.
What is the difference between using a feather or making a fur coat if I find a dead seal?
Look, just like eating roadkill, I don't think there's a massive problem with someone making a fur coat out of a dead animal that, was found by the side of the road. Now, I think there might be problems with it. Like, I wouldn't choose to use that coat. I think it's disgusting. Just like how I wouldn't wear a coat made out of a human skin. but I wouldn't consider it non-vegan to use the skin of an animal that you find dead by the side of the road.
Extremely true. Where do you think the idea of using feathers as fillings for jackets or pillows, or to make bed covers, where do you think those ideas come from?
I don't see the relevance of this. Even if the idea of using feathers came from animals being exploited, then I don't see how it's wrong to use them now.
So veganism goes to the root of the problem, and it's the deontic, yeah, you hate that, but it's the deontic rejection of all.
Why does he think I would hate the word deontic? I'm literally a threshold deontologist. Like, come on.
And the fact that you are so thick to understand that, so unintelligent to understand that simple concept, is very dangerous for animals. And why do I say it's very dangerous? This guy with 500 subscribers is praised by the great activists, the great, for example, there is this comment by Hunter, the ex-hunter who wants to hunt again and believe that he's committing a virtue killing by hunting. The evil animals that, because the animals are so evil that they cause suffering to each other.
Let's have a look at this comment. Yeah, look, I can't find the comment, so I don't know if he's just like hallucinating or something.
I have never come across such dishonest behavior as I have seen in the Singerian camp.
Show how I'm dishonest. You see, this is like how I talk later in my video. It's pretty rare for followers of Leslie Cross to actually give any evidence for their claims.
Singer doesn't believe in animal rights and is not veganism. So, but what I have seen in what they dishonestly call the vegan movement is the most dishonest shit that I have seen ever. I have never seen this level of dishonesty. Even from intersectionals. Intersectionals are, they even try to engage in conversations with people. It's not like, oh, let's block everyone that disagrees with intersectionality. Let's block, which has happened, but not immediately. It's as soon as you say, well, your messaging is a vegetarian message, or your message is a welfarist message in this video. Oh, let's block them. Well, we defeated them. You defeated what? Defeated what? The vegans? Defeated veganism? No, maybe you are winning the battle with followers, likes, lies, because they say that.
Like, this is crazy. Like, he's 52 minutes into this video. He's just rambling about stuff that has nothing to do with me. Like, he's like less than 10 minutes into my video?
Veganism is the rejection of the commodification and instrumentalization.
Notice how he changes, right? Like, the Leslie Cross definition is veganism is the doctrine that man should live without exploiting animals. And he says exploitation is selfish use. But David's happy to say, oh, it's against the instrumentalization of animals. Well, that is a different thing.
Yeah, whatever comes from an animal is not to be made into a human commodity.
Show how that's entailed by Leslie Cross's definition. And not by some quote from Leslie Cross, right? Leslie Cross may have believed that, but it's not entailed by his definition.
But this girl is so unsmart.
Puzzling, considering that a feather is not an animal.
You know how dangerous these ideas by these geniuses are? A wing of a bird is not a bird. So I can maybe eat the wing because I'm not eating the animal, it's only the wing.
As sentient animate creatures other than man.
I don't know why he says this. I didn't talk at all about Leslie Cross's definition in my first video.
Unusual definition, as animal is typically understood to encompass all beings classed under kingdom Animalia and no others. But I think the fact...
No, the problem was that in the context, in the theoretical framework of veganism, that's what animals should mean, because humans are animals, but humans are the oppressors of this cause. Do you understand that? I don't think that I shouldn't even ask.
All I'm saying is that it's a atypical definition. Like, it is. I'm not even saying it's wrong. I say in my video that I think that's good.
Find animals this way actually improves his definition. When I say animals going forward in this video, that would just be shorthand for non-human sentient beings. So based on these definitions, we can deduce that the cross, veganism is the doctrine that man should live without using non-human sentient beings for selfish purposes.
So far, he kind of encompasses what Leslie tried to communicate. But here's where he makes a great leap and tries to accommodate the definition of Leslie Cross to his own fucking idea.
So, unfortunately, since there is more than one way to understand the phrase selfish purposes, this merely introduces a new layer of ambiguity, and the definition remains unclear.
What is selfish? I don't understand.
Okay, if it's so easy to understand, why don't you just tell me what it means?
What do you mean by exploitation? What do you mean by use? To this fucking genius, to explain to this fucking genius what exploitation means. How come? How come when humans are the victims, it's very clear. Nobody's saying to the human rights advocate or activist, what do you mean by exploitation? Who defined it? Maybe the NutriBureau has the answer.
That term is defined.
What is so unclear? What is so fucking unclear? But maybe if I use this animal for this purpose, no, that is not vegan.
Frustratingly, Cross never explicitly defined the term, and without this information,
I don't understand.
Cross's definition just lacks the necessary clarity to even function as a definition of veganism.
Yeah, because trade equalized rights is very clear. Yeah.
However, there may be a way to determine what Cross means by selfish purposes, even if he hasn't explicitly defined it. To start with, it's not as if selfish purposes is a totally unclear term that could mean just about anything. There's really only two options for the meaning of the term.
Okay.
So if tomorrow we
he
uncovered
understands,
recent documents
really.
from Cross that define using for selfish purposes, it would likely say one of two things. Either actions that use an animal in a way that is primarily motivated.
So he assumes that there is only these two options that he came up with so that he can introduce the Singerian stance in the second one.
Well, there are two obvious options for what for selfish purposes could mean, right? Maybe there's a third one that I'm not aware of. Cross-sites haven't been helpful at all in showing that. But what I'm doing here is I'm actually being charitable to Leslie Cross, right? I say, look, for selfish purposes is unclear, but like to be charitable, maybe we can try and figure out what that means from his writing.
Either actions that use an animal in a way that is primarily motivated by personal benefit rather than by consideration for what benefits the animal, even if no harm occurs to the animal, or actions that provide personal benefit at the expense of the animal, where the animal is harmed or negatively affected in some way.
That's the Singerian idea. Well, if the animal is not harmed, what is the problem? So, welfareism.
Like, does he think I'm endorsing this idea? I'm specifically making this video to critique Cross.
What is the idea that is being promoted by the use of feathers for human commodities? The idea is that birds are vending machines for humans.
I don't think that's entailed, that using a feather promotes the idea that birds are vending machines for humans. If you think that's the case, then give me some proof. That's just an empirical claim without proof.
Said what Singer says, but I don't know what Singer says because I haven't read Peter Singer. You know, all these people reject the title of utilitarians because they haven't read Peter Singer, and they whatever they promote is Peter Singer's utilitarianism. Peter Singer doesn't say what.
The part that I critique in my previous video was literally a quote from Peter Singer.
Well, I'm not a utilitarian. No, Peter Singer says, I don't believe in rights, I'm a utilitarian.
And I believe in rights. I'm not a utilitarian.
When you have no reading comprehension, you start strawmanning the author of the text that you read. Now, maybe it's at the expense of the animal.
Look, David, why don't you just tell me what for selfish use means?
This framing indicates that Cross likely defines selfish purposes, the second way, as actions that provide personal benefit at the expense of the animal.
No, that's where you fucking started making up stuff.
I mean, I think it's pretty clear the path I took to get there, right? Like, I showed quotes from Leslie Cross.
Singerian point of view, which clearly you don't even realize. And maybe you haven't read Singer at all.
This isn't even something that Peter Singer would agree with, right? Like, I talk about actions that benefit you at the expense of the animal, Right? Singer would say it's okay if the benefit to you is greater than the expense of the animal. But in what I've said, the benefit to you could be far greater than the expense to the animal, and it would still be forbidden under Cross's definition, even though Peter Singer would think it's okay. So it's just bizarre. It's a completely different thing.
Utilitarian gang of idiots that go out to the streets and, they talk in the schools and, yeah, you can ask me whatever. Yeah, really. What you are doing is misinforming everybody. If you go to a school to say that veganism is trade equalized, blah, 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 and you repeat a whole bunch, like the mouthful of the definition that the NutriBro pulled out of his ass, you are confusing a lot of kids about what veganism means.
Yeah, I say in my first video that I don't think everyone needs to be assaulted with philosophical jargon when they ask what veganism is, and it's okay to communicate the idea in simpler terms.
For him, veganism should be the doctrine that man should live without using non-human sentient beings for personal benefit at their expense, so causing harm to them.
Yeah, I think that's the most straightforward interpretation of what Leslie Cross said. If it's not, then why don't you just clear it up for me?
When Paul Bashir redefined exploitation and said, without their consent. No, why without their consent? They cannot give consent. Singerian ideas are the dead of veganism. If people pretend that Singer is the leader of veganism, then everything is up, exploitation is fine as long as there is not obvious benefit causing harm to animals. So exploitation is okay if it's painless, basically. All these utilitarians, if there is no utility laws, which would mean causing pain to the animal.
That's just something I've never said.
Anyway, so this guy from then on, he believes that his explanation pulled out of his fucking ass is what Leslie Cross meant. Just because he said that the relationship between humans and animals is parasitic, then he deduces so that means that it causes harm, and then exploitation should include harm.
Yeah, well, that's what a parasitic relationship means.
He didn't pretend to explain the whole spectrum of exploitation with the word parasitic. Okay?
So,
by physics definition, by physiological definition, you cannot maintain your way.
Oh, we got a Mike Israetel jump scare there. So that's the end of David C. Arena's response. I don't think he really made any substantive criticisms. Maybe the one thing that I'll give him credit for is that he showed quotes from Leslie Cross talking about things that might be slightly different to, use at the animal's expense. However, what Cross said elsewhere is just entirely different to the topic of the video, which was Cross's definition of veganism. So I don't know what that's supposed to show. So I plan for this to be the last video I make about any Crossites, unless they want to come on and debate, which I'm happy to do. And if they think that they've really got some kind of substantive argument, then once again, let's just hash it out in a voice call. But otherwise, that's the end of the discussion. Take care.